In this video, I will give you 5 reasons why you are not ready for marriage. What's up, y'all, and welcome to Here's My Take, where I share with you the insights and wisdom I've won the hard way. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you wished someone with the knowledge and insights would have loved you enough or cared for you enough to share with you what they knew? Think about it this way. If this is your first time walking down a path, it doesn't matter how many others you've seen or have watched walk it, you won't know the blind spots. So here it is. What gives me the authority to talk about this subject? What gives me the authority to talk about the blind spots of marriage? Well, my authority rests in the fact that I have walked this path called marriage myself. And this is what I wish someone would have told me. Now, let me tell you what this is not. This is not me pointing fingers. And this is not an admission of guilt, okay? These are simple observations that I've made from my own marriage and through my communication with others. So here we go. Sign number 1. For the first one, I know that some of my viewers are not Christian, and that is fine because the next 4 signs will be universal. But this first one is strictly for Christians, or you can fill in the blank if you are religious. The first sign you are not ready for marriage is this: you believe that Jesus will fix your offenses. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it's okay to believe that Jesus will walk alongside you in your marriage, but it is not okay to think that Jesus will do the walking himself. In other words, you cannot be rude, offensive, or disrespectful to your spouse and think that prayer will clear it up. Here are the facts. Jesus will not save your marriage. You will. Now, why do I say this? I grew up in church, and I had this overinflated and unrealistic view of what Jesus was responsible for. And like most Christians, we think that Jesus is the answer to just about everything. But the problem is this: where does the personal responsibility come in? What I am not saying is that Jesus can't heal your spouse's heart. But why rely on that when you can prevent it in the first place? It is not wise to break your marriage because you lack care or even concern for it and then think you can ask Jesus to fix it. So, sign number 1 that you are ready for marriage is when you realize the success of your marriage depends upon you and not upon whoever you believe in. I am an advocate of look in the mirror first ministry, which means before you decide if these signs align with your potential mate, be sure you're not aligning with these signs first. And then, secondly, decide if they apply to your potential mate. Look here first, look there second, because it takes 2 to make a marriage. It takes 2 to make a marriage work. And if one person is lagging, the whole marriage will suffer. So here's a bonus point: Jesus doesn't change character, and he does not fulfill potential. That is a personal matter. So if you see that they align with these signs, don't fool yourself into thinking that Jesus will change them. He won't. Sign number two, you are not ready for marriage. Do you want to be single while married? Somebody just said, what? Yes, yes. Do you want to be single while married? This means you like the idea of marriage, but you hate the obligation of it. When marriage is done right, it is beautiful. But when marriage is done wrong, it is a nightmare. You must first and foremost realize that you are obligated to the person you are marrying, which means you serve them and they should be serving you. If the word serve is too heavy for you, try the word care. You care for them and they care for you. Once you're married, while you don't want to lose yourself in the marriage, you have to know that it is no longer about you, or it is no longer just about you. Think about it. You are asking a person, you are asking a person to spend the rest of their lives with you. You can't possibly think that any form of selfishness will sustain that kind of longevity. But what helps is if you have the other person in mind. There is an analogy that describes marriage very well. The analogy goes, there are people sitting around a table waiting to eat, but they are given utensils that are too long. Consequently, they can't feed themselves. The people who survive are the ones who help each other by feeding the person sitting across from them. The people who starve are the ones who refuse to be cooperative with the person sitting across from them and insist on feeding themselves and themselves alone. If you take this latter mentality into marriage, hear me when I say it will not survive. The only way your marriage will survive is if the focus is on feeding one another. Here's a bonus. Here's a bonus point. It is fatal to be with someone who you're feeding, but they refuse to feed you. I'm going to take a sip of my tea on that one. Let that one marinate a little bit. It's fatal to be feeding someone, but they refuse to feed you. Listen, the marriage, it will end because you can't keep giving out but not receiving anything in return. They will easily move on because you've made them figuratively, figuratively, get it out, sir. You got this. Figuratively, because you've made them figuratively fat from your love, but you will be emotionally emaciated and will be left putting yourself back together. Don't do it. Sign number three. You are not ready for marriage if you feel like you always have to be right. If it hurts your pride or your ego to be wrong, marriage is not for you. Moving on to number four. It's hard for you to forgive. Things will happen in marriage. Offenses that are intentional or those that are unintentional. And often, most perceived slights they are going to be unintentional. Your spouse didn't mean it. But if you can't let things go and you live in the past, you have a problem. If you can't let things if you can't let things live in the past, once you have dealt with them, because I'm not saying that you should sweep things under the rug, but once you talk about things, once you talk them out and you practice conflict resolution and you still can't let it go, then for the time being, you may want to put a halt on marriage. I know, you already got the colors and probably already sent out the invitations and the invites and all of that. You might want to put it on hold and work on that before you go through those nuptials. If you think evening the score is how you must defend yourself, if you keep score, if in the next situation you bring up an old resolved issue, you are not ready to be married. And when I say resolved, I mean that you have already discussed it and the both of you have put it behind you. Now, I'm talking to those who are not currently married. And if you are and you are doing any of these things, stop it. I'm trying to save your marriage. Stop it. But for those of you who are not currently married and you have never been married, I want you to think of a friend or a coworker. How do you handle offenses? Marriage will only magnify how you handle conflict. And for most people, once they are married, they rarely ever change um, their concerning behaviors. And in fact, those behaviors they usually get worse. So so at this point, someone is saying, someone is saying, someone is saying, who is he? Who is he to tell someone if they're ready for marriage? Who is this guy with his little red cap on who's telling us that you ain't ready for marriage? Hey, listen, if that's you, you're not ready for marriage. You ain't ready. You're combative. You're argumentative. You're not ready for marriage. I'm telling you. Moving on. Sign number 5. You are not ready for marriage if you cannot communicate. Now, people think that they know what communication is, but many do not. Just because you like to talk does not mean you know how to communicate. Communication is not talking. It is not talking to me listening to you, and me coming to the same conclusion you arrived at before this conversation even began. Communication is what Stephen Covey said, the late Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Healthy People. I think it's the name of it. 7 Habits of no, I think I'm messing that up. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I know who Stephen Covey is. I don't remember the name of the book at the moment. It's slipping my mind. 7 Habits of Effective People, something like that. Anyways, he said this. He said that communication is this: seek first to understand, and then to be understood. So I'm gonna say that one more time. Seek first to understand, and then to be understood. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It just came to me. That's what it is. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he says, seek first to understand and then be understood. If you are a better talker than you are a listener, you are not a good communicator, no matter how open and honest you want to be, because good communication is good listening. Let me take a sip on that. Good communication is good listening. And I mean a good, honest, active listener who seeks to understand and comprehend what a person is saying and not your interpretation of what you think they're saying. Okay? Your spouse is not your enemy. You two are not verbal sparring partners. You are not attempting to out argue each other. You are attempting to address issues, fix them, and move on with a healthy marriage. Remember the analogy. Um, remember the analogy of the people sitting at the table, um, wanting to only be heard and not wanting to understand your spouse is like attempting to feed yourself and yourself alone. Help feed one another by validating each other's feelings and perspectives. You are not married to you are not married to one up each other, but to hear one another's hearts because in the end, you are all you have. You are all it's just the two of y'all. No one else can make or break your marriage but you. Hey, listen, guys, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe for more. Until next time.